Welcome back to Homesteading with the Zimmermans, where we work hard and play hard on our little corner of land in Iowa. My husband and I were born and raised Old Order Mennonite, or horse and buggy Mennonite, as some refer to them as. And although we are no longer part of that culture or community, we are intentional about passing on the old-fashioned skills of our childhood to the next generation. Before we dive in and get started with all the fun I have for you in this week's video, let me remind you about the pantry challenge that my friend Michelle and I have going on. You can follow the first link in my description, and that will take you to her landing page where she has all the recipes saved, where we teach you how to replace pantry staples with from scratch things like ranch dressing mix, pizza crust. The list is pretty long and you're gonna love it. And while you're there, don't forget that we are giving away a Bosch mixer and a dehydrator. So don't forget to watch the video and then follow the link in my description to go to Michelle's blog, where she has all the details on the pantry challenge and winning the Bosch mixer. Hello everyone, Ruth Ann Zimmerman here for Homesteading with the Zimmermans, and spring has come to Iowa, and that means life has gotten very, very busy, and thankfully we've had rain every couple days that has kept me out of the garden or has taken gardening off of the list, because by the time I get all the milk taken care of with twice a day milking, and we get all the animals taken care of, and then also this is the last week of school for our children, so there's a lot of last week of school stuff that needs to happen, and it's just a really busy time. Oh, and also we are putting up a new building here on the homestead, so there's that to distract us. What I've got on the list for today is to prune my fruit trees and put up the codling moth prevention. When we went to Grandma's house, we'd always go past this orchard, and the orchard was owned by my dad's cousin, and it was a beautifully manicured orchard, and we'd stop in and buy fruit all summer long. But the one thing that I remember was that in the spring, when the trees were blossoming, you would see white gallon jugs hanging from the trees. And I'd ask Mom, what's in those jugs? And she'd say, oh, there's stuff in there that prevents moths from making holes in the apples. Makes those little codling moths have worms that go into the cores of the fruit, and your apples won't keep if the worms have made holes in, because they'll rot from the inside out. Anyway, when I became an adult and wanted to raise my own fruit, I started asking Mom, what do you think was in those jugs? Do you know what was in them? And she said, well, I know probably ammonia was in them, because that'll kill them, but I don't know what else was in them. Well, I finally found the right person to ask, and found what mixture was in those white jugs and what my dad's cousin used to prevent codling moths in his fruit. So that is what I'm going to be showing you today. And first I'm going to prune them, and then I'm going to hang these jugs with this mixture. And Mom was right, part of the mixture is ammonia. So when we decided to start our own orchard probably 15 years ago, one of the reasons that we wanted to start our own orchard is because we don't want to spend the money for organic fruits, and number two, we would rather have our fruits with some wormholes in them than to spray the trees with a pesticide to prevent the worms. So up until now, we've just taken whatever harvest we get. If they have worms in, we just cut them out. And we've actually gotten quite a bit of harvest. But this year I'm excited to try this mixture that is supposed to prevent codling moths. Also, in true Iowa fashion, it's very, very windy outside. And since I'm already struggling with my microphone, I've got lots of mic issues with this mic, and I think it's the cord. I may need to get a new cord. I am going to have to film and then do voiceover because it's stormy outside, like 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. So now that our fruit trees are more established, the harvest is bigger. And this is part of the reason why we've started taking it more serious, our pruning and our pest prevention, because the amount of harvest that we're bringing in from our fruit trees each fall is significant. So being able to store apples and pears for fresh winter eating has become one of our goals, and they really don't store as long when they have codling moth worms on the inside. So although we've been preserving them, by making pie fillings and applesauce and pear sauce and jams and jellies, we really would like to store them for fresh eating longer throughout the winter. So the first two trees I'm going to prune are our pear trees, because they don't take quite as much pruning, and it always takes me a little bit to work up the confidence to just cut off branches. So if you're new to pruning your fruit trees, I recommend just getting out there and cutting off little branches like I'm doing right here. These little branches are not strong enough to support fruit, but they are going to take some energy from the tree, so you're just going to work on taking off all those little branches, and then you're going to walk around the tree and take out any branches that don't look like they are growing in the right direction. Like, you want these main branches, and then you want little branches that are growing in that same direction. And then the next thing you're going to start with is these little suckers that grow from the base of the tree. These, just like on tomato plants, these will just take lots of energy from the trees, and they'll never amount to anything. So here's another place that you can start if you are trying to work up the confidence, like I usually have to when it's tree pruning time. So take away all these little suckers at the root that are coming out of the root of every tree. So on the pear trees, the next thing you're going to look for is these suckers that are growing off of the branches. They tend to sprout where I've previously trimmed the trees, and those also will never produce fruit. They will just take a lot of energy from the tree. So find any of those suckers that are growing from the main branches of the pear trees or apple trees. They're not quite as visible in apple trees, but take off any of those little suckers from the main branches. So this pear tree here is one of the oldest fruit trees on our property, and as I've gotten more confident in my pruning, I can see some of these big branches that I should have cut out a couple years ago because they're growing too low, and they're not growing with the main part of the tree. They're kind of going out at an angle. But like I said, just cut some branches. Make it your goal to cut some branches every year, and you will gain confidence. So now we're going to move on to our apple trees. And you can see this one has a lot of suckers or water spouts growing here. And it also has one section that's completely dead. It was injured and it died, and each year it died a little more until it was completely dead. So I'm going to be trimming that back. I'm going to be taking off any small branches that I know are not strong enough to bear any fruit. And this one is too low. We're going to catch that one with the lawnmower, and that one's got to come off. So one of the things that helped me gain the most confidence was waiting until my trees are blooming or have leaves. It just gave me a better feel for which branches are going to be producing fruit. And each year I got a little better at it and gained more confidence. And even though somebody that has more experience and is better at it would probably see a lot more branches that they would cut out or have cut out years ago, we all begin somewhere. So if you are afraid to get started or wondering where to get started, even if your fruit trees are already, done blooming and in leaf, I encourage you to go out there and cut some branches that you can tell are never going to be bearing fruit or are just in the wrong place. We prune our fruit trees because it makes them stronger and healthier, and you will have a more abundant harvest, or you'll have a better fruit size or better crop when we take off the branches that are just a drain on the tree's energy. So here's a great example of if you're not sure where to get started. Apple trees have all these little branches along their main branches, and these you can tell are blooming, but those little branches are never going to be strong enough to bear fruit. So your tree is going to put energy into those blossoms, but you won't be getting any fruit. So removing these will allow the tree to put more energy into the blossoms that actually are on branches that are strong enough to bear fruit. So I'm going to move on to one of our younger apple trees, and again I'm just going to clean it up around the bottom. Those little branches have no business taking energy away from my apples or possible apples that this tree could produce. And you can tell that this one we planted after I had gained some confidence because it has 3 main branches and those are cleaned up. There's no little branches or suckers growing on those. And just walk around the tree and look for things that are growing at an odd angle. And even now as I'm editing, I can see at least one branch that I would take away if I were to go back out there, but it could also just be the angle of the camera making that one branch look like it's growing in a way that I don't want it to. Here's another one of our younger apple trees, and this one has a more vigorous habit. You can tell that it puts out a lot of new growth every year. And we also still have this one on a support, trying to get it to be more upright. It was leaning a little bit. And guys, if you're planting an orchard, mark your trees with what variety they are, because we didn't mark them and we don't even really know what variety our trees are anymore. But the main fruit trees that we can grow here in our climate are pears and apples, plums, and cherries. We cannot grow peaches because our winters get too harsh and our spring is unpredictable with below freezing temperatures after they have leafed out. So then I'm just going to use the same approach to our plum trees. We have 2 plum trees and they are new. They have not produced any fruit yet. So I'm just going to take away all those water whips or water spouts or suckers that are growing from the bottom. And then I'm going to take a close look at the tree and cut off any branches that are crossing over any branches or that are at an angle that don't line up with the way the rest of the branches are growing. So this one here is a cherry tree, and I've done pretty good with pruning this one and keeping it trimmed up. So I'm just going to take off anything that has died back or anything that isn't leafing out, and going to look for any branches that I may have missed in previous years that are growing the wrong way. So this cherry tree is a couple years older and has already started producing, and I'm just going to take all these little twigs off here along the main branches because we have an older cherry tree, and I'm going to show you what happens when you don't take all these little branches off of the main branches. So I want the center of the tree, like the trunks of each branch, to look nice and clean without anything taking the energy from the main fruit-bearing branches. And then this one, you can see how this branch grows across. It crosses over another branch, and it's not going up like its siblings or like its neighbors are. So that one's got to go as well. So this cherry tree here is the oldest fruit tree on our property, and I have never trimmed this one, and you can tell how low to the ground each of its branches are. So when I trim my cherry trees, I keep this one in mind because this one really is not fun to mow under or to pick cherries from because it has so many little branches. So another reason that I love to wait until my trees are blooming to do the pruning is because I then get to reward myself with apple blossom bouquets to put all over the house. And it's my reward for doing a job that isn't my favorite. I don't dislike pruning my trees, but I'm not real, up until these last couple years, I haven't been real confident, so then I'd keep pushing it off. But now that I wait until the trees are blooming, I see those blossoms and I think I want to recreate all the apple blossom bouquets that I made last spring, and that's enough to motivate me and get me out there pruning my fruit trees.
got a dump truck, Mom.
Okay.
Whoa! Whoa! Alright. Alright, check this out. Hey, listen, I'm gonna get the crane. I borrowed a crane from someone else. Because you were so kind to let
I want to show you the cherry one. Look at the cherry one. Okay, I really wanted to work outside, but it's just too windy. So we're going to start by, I've collected all these milk jugs from the school lunch program, and we're gonna start by cutting a small rectangle right below the shoulder of this milk jug. Something like that. You don't want to go so far down that when you hang your jug, your liquid runs out the bottom. So you want to cut your window right below the shoulder on the opposite shoulder of your handle. Okay, 1, 2, 3, that's 5. I really wanted 6. The boys went to get me another one, but they haven't come back yet, so they must have gotten distracted. So into each jug, we're going to put 1 cup of apple cider vinegar, and then we're going to put 1/3 cup of dark molasses or blackstrap molasses. So the molasses and apple cider vinegar is what's going to attract your moth. Right now in the spring, the larva is living in the bark of the tree, and that will hatch into a moth, and the moths then lay their eggs on the fruit, and those eggs hatch and the larva burrows into the fruit and spoils your fruit. This beautiful illustration by Rebecca Pitcher gives you an idea of what we're trying to do. We're trying to interrupt this life cycle of the codling moth. So the molasses and the apple cider vinegar, and then our third ingredient is going to be ammonia. We only need 1/2 teaspoon of ammonia, and this is actually the poison that will kill your codling moth. So we're gonna put 1/2 teaspoon of ammonia. And then to all of that, you're gonna add 2 cups of water. And there we go. We're gonna hang this into the tree just like that. And we're gonna tie it real tight so it doesn't shimmy around in the wind. And that will attract the moths that lay the eggs that hatch into the worms that ruin your fruit. So because I know that these jugs will be hanging in the trees all summer long, I want to use more than just twine or string to attach them. I'm going to use some real sturdy cotton t-shirt, and I'm going to make the strings nice and wide. So then I'm going to take my jugs and tie them as high up into the tree as I can reach. I want them to be as close to the blossoms as possible. And the reason I only did 6 trees is I only had 6 jugs. And I'm not too concerned about the plum trees because they're not real close to blooming and they have not yet produced any fruit. They're still young trees. So that's why I focused on the 6 trees that were blooming or the closest to blooming. So now that our trees are established and giving bushels of fruit, that's one of the reasons we've become more intentional with our pruning and pest prevention, is because we've realized that our pears and apples will store much longer if they don't have blemishes from the worms. So that's what we're trying to focus on, is having more of our own fruit to store for winter eating so that we can buy less fruit from the grocery store. So when to hang your codling moth traps. And the right time to hang your traps is any time after the tree's blossoms start opening, because the larva hatches from the bark of the tree about the same time the blossoms open. So you want to hang them anytime before, during, or right after your tree blooms. So yesterday when I was trimming the apple tree, which is the one that has the most blossoms, I did see a couple moths, so I know that they are out and about. And then you're going to let these traps hang in the trees through the entire summer and into the fall until you harvest your fruit. And if at any time during the summer you notice that the liquid has evaporated, all you need to do is add some more water and it'll activate all the ingredients again, and it will continue to capture your moth. Now for some other news around the farm. We have 2 hen ducks that were both sitting on a nest, and they hatched out 12 baby ducklings. So we did catch them all and move them into the chicken house because we were afraid that the mama ducks, being first-time moms, would struggle to protect 12 babies from our cats. So we'll keep them here in the chicken house for a couple weeks until the ducklings are a little older and maybe do not appear quite as appetizing to our mama cats. And speaking of cats, I'm not sure if I shared with you last week or not that our mama cat had 4 babies, and she had them in the corner of our milking stall. So we have been keeping an eye on them, but here recently she keeps moving them, and every day after school Maxwell finds them again, and then she moves them again. And a few days ago he came in and said he found another nest full of babies. So this nestful, we know that the mama is feral, and she moved them almost immediately after we found them. We've also finally moved the cows to their summer pasture, and this is one of my very favorite days of spring because the cows get so happy to finally be going out and eating grass after eating dry hay all winter. So this also then means that we now milk outside, rain or shine. And hopefully we will have more shine than rain this spring.
Well, I can get foam.
So we also took a little trip to my sister's retail greenhouse and we bought our garden seedlings. And yes, I buy all my garden seedlings. My sister does a great job, and I get to buy these beautiful, healthy seedlings. And I have all these varieties to choose from. I get to support my sister and her husband, in their livelihood. And you know what? I really don't enjoy all the dirt and fuss that starting my own seedlings causes me in the late winter when the house is busy and active and everybody wants to be outside. I really do not have any space for tender little seedlings and dirt all over the house. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of another week here on the homestead. Thank you to each and every one of you that show us love by commenting, liking, and sharing our YouTube video. You are our favorite. God is good.